So you want to main Darius, the Hand of Noxus. Well, you've come to the right place. Hi champions! In this video, we'll be going through Wild Rift's Darius in depth. We'll be going through Darius' abilities and leveling order, spells, combos, builds, runes, counters, and general combat tips. And if you have any of your own Darius tips, please share them down in the comments below. First, ask yourself, why do you want to main Darius? Darius pros: he's pretty tanky and can deal a lot of damage at the same time, has a lot of crowd control, strong teamfight potential, and he has some sustain. Darius cons: he has very low mobility, easy to kite his abilities, enemies can gank him easily. Darius is a fighter that deals physical damage. Wild Rift considers him to be of average difficulty, and I personally find him easy to average. In this guide, we're playing Darius in the Baron lane. My name is Tids. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe and click the bell for everything Wild Rift. Let's get into Darius' abilities. Darius passive, Hemorrhage. Attacks cause enemies to bleed, dealing physical damage over 5 seconds. This can stack up to 5 times. Upon reaching full stacks, Darius gains Noxian Might for 5 seconds. Noxian Might provides 20 attack damage and applies full stacks of Hemorrhage instead of 1. You can keep track of Darius' stacks under his health bar shown here. Continuously auto-attacking or using abilities that apply stacks will refresh Noxian Might. You will also apply full stacks to other enemies you attack if you already have full stacks. Darius' first ability, Decimate. Darius' first ability is a circle type. Darius swings his axe after a short delay. Hitting enemies with the blade of the axe deals damage. This also heals him for 12% of his missing health for each champion hit. This applies his passive Hemorrhage. The outer range of his first ability is more powerful than the inner range. This ability has a cooldown of 9.5 seconds. This is your main damage. Darius' second ability, Crippling Strike. It's a self-buff ability type. Empowers his next attack for 7 seconds to deal extra physical damage, 30% bonus attack damage. This also slows enemies by 90% for 1 second. This ability also increases the range of your basic attack. This ability has a cooldown of 5.6 seconds. Darius' third ability, Apprehend. This ability is a cone type. This ability pulls enemies in front of him and you can pull multiple. This will slow enemies by 40% for 1 second. There is also a passive when this ability is used, giving Darius 15% armor penetration. Darius' ultimate, Noxian Guillotine. This ability is a leap type. Darius leaps to execute a champion, dealing true damage. The damage is increased by 20% per Hemorrhage stack and applies Hemorrhage. If you kill a target with this ultimate, it will refresh the cooldown, meaning you can use it again if an enemy is killed. This will grant Noxian Might for 5 seconds, causing nearby minions and monsters to flee for 1.5 seconds. This ultimate has a cooldown of 80 seconds. Next, leveling order. For the first 5 levels, 1, 3, 2, 1, 5. Then you want to prioritize maxing out his ultimate for increased damage and decreased cooldown, his first ability for increased damage and decreased cooldown, his third ability for increased armor penetration and decreased cooldown, then his second ability for increased damage and decreased cooldown. For spells, I recommend Flash, and for the second spell, I recommend either Ghost for movement speed, especially since Darius lacks mobility, or Ignite for true damage and anti-heal, or Barrier for more tankiness. I personally prefer Ghost or Ignite. Next, Darius combos. Before we get into combos, a few tips and things to remember. Darius really makes use of his auto attacks. Make sure to use your auto attacks against opponents. Using your auto attacks in between combos is important. You do not have to use every single ability right away, such as the third ability. This will keep the bleed on them and also build up the stacks. Remember that Darius' first ability can heal him if you hit champions with it. Because of this, sometimes it's best to hold it after you take damage instead of using it right away. His third ability can be used to bring enemies back to you when they try to escape. He has slows on his second and third ability. Executing enemy champions with your ultimate will keep your ultimate off cooldown. This is incredibly powerful. The more stacks you have, the more powerful your ultimate. I recommend trying to have full stacks before you use the ultimate for maximum damage. His third ability is also situational. Sometimes you can save it for when an enemy is out of reach. Try and hit enemies with the outer range of your first ability. You can use your third ability to pull them back towards you. Remember, your 2 increases the range of your basic attacks. Remember, when you have max stacks, you can easily apply those stacks to multiple enemies with your first ability. You can use Flash to surprise the enemies. Flash can be used while you're loading your first skill up. This is a great way to jump into team fights, especially if you need heals or you want to apply stacks to multiple targets. This can also apply the slow to multiple targets. Using Flash from a distance is also a good way to catch enemies by surprise with your first ability. Since there is a little delay at the start, they will know when you're about to use that ability. This basically can counter that. Your second skill can be used to reset the attack animation of your auto attack just by using your second ability right after you hit the auto attack. You can also skip the animation of your second ability by using your first ability right after. Here is a quick way to get stacks by resetting your attack animation. Basic, 2, 1. And let's get into the other combos. Basic, 2, basic.
They will regret opposing me.
3, basic, 2, 1. You can add another basic in between if you'd like, but this might give them time to get away if they have escapes. Feel free to comment down more combos you have for Darius, as his skills can be pretty situational. Sometimes you might have to use your ultimate early, but in most cases I recommend using it either when you have as many stacks as possible or the enemy is at an execute threshold. Next, Darius builds. Builds are situational and it depends on the game you're in. Builds can also change depending on the current meta. My builds are based on what players are currently building in high level ranked. I recommend reading the bonuses of these items in your item builder. Trinity Force for health, attack damage, attack speed, mana and ability haste, Dead Man's Plate for health and armor, Ninja's Teleport or Ninja's Glory, Serek's Gauge for max health, Black Cleaver for health, attack damage and ability haste, or Mortal Reminder for attack damage and anti-heal. The core items I would say for Darius though is Trinity Force, Serek's Gauge, Death Dance, Guardian Angel and Black Cleaver. If you need more magical resistance, I recommend Spectre's Cal for health and magical resistance. I really like this item for its sustain as well, and an item great against physicals, I recommend Radiant's Omen. Next, Darius runes. For runes, I recommend Conqueror as your main rune, as it synergizes well for Darius' harassment playstyle. For your 3 secondary runes, Brutal for damage and armor pen, or Triumph for more sustain and damage to low health players, which works really well for your ultimate execution. Hunter Titan for health and tenacity, Sweet Tooth for extra gold and sustain. Darius counters, enemies who know how to keep their distance from you. Darius cannot do much if enemies position themselves well. Darius relies a lot on his stacks and slows. Darius has really low mobility. Getting caught out by ganks or being too far out can be deadly for Darius. Enemies with escapes or dashes. Enemies who are keeping track of Darius cooldowns. This way they know when to attack Darius because he has nothing up. Enemies who manage their health. Keeping Darius from executing them will prevent the cooldown reset of his ultimate. Because Darius' first ability has a load up time, this basically can act as a warning for enemy players to get out of range. Now, general and combat tips. Baiting out enemy escapes, this way they cannot get out of your combos. Try to hit multiple enemies with your first ability in team fights to apply stacks and gain heals. Take advantage of enemies who are close range, this will benefit Darius. Try and keep enemies away from their minions by harassing them back to their turret. Make sure to ward up your lane as Darius has low mobility. Remember that your ultimate is an execute and does more damage when there are stacks applied. If you have a difficult early game start, I recommend building more lifesteal and defense. And that is all for the Darius guide. Please let me know in the comments which champion you would like to main next. I already have an Ari guide which I will link down below. I also have many other beginner guides which I will also link down below if you want to see those and you're new to Wild Rift. Subscribe and click the bell for more champion guides. I'm planning to release one every day or one every 2 days. Like the video if you found this helpful. I hope to see you guys for the next video. Alright champions, bye!